Doesn't that just sound great? Like, so great, we should probably watch it again and listen to that song. Neighbors, am I right? That statement probably means something different for each one of you. Either you've had a neighbor like that one, which, tell me where you're living, because I'll move there. Or maybe you've had one of these other neighbors. Like neighbors can vary. And actually, as you look through some of these and think through, you may even be one of these neighbors. I don't know. But we tend to think and look at our neighbors. But maybe you've had a neighbor like this one. Howdy-ho, neighbor. Someone who just has wisdom and advice for you at all times, whenever you need it, just right over that fence. Or maybe you have a neighbor that's the clumsy, enters as they wish and does as they please, like this one. These are the classics of neighbors that we're looking at here. But you have the did I do that type neighbor, Steve Urkel. I know it's awful, but Steve Urkel. Or maybe you have the hi diddly ho neighbor, you know? Or even this one. Does anybody know who this one is? Yes, Kravis. Gladys, right? Gladys Kravitz from Bewitched. She was always looking in the window, seeing what's going on. You have that nosy neighbor. But out of all these neighbors and all the different types, the one that we hope and then we pray that we don't have is a Dennis. Right? We hope that we don't have a Dennis. Dennis the Menace here. Well, growing up, we lived beside a Dennis. We had it was a semi-split home, and so our very next door neighbors, we had a Dennis. We're going to be looking at that a bit this morning as we're looking and getting into the series of Into the Neighborhood. This is going to be a two-part series where we're looking at what does it really mean to be getting into our neighborhood? What does it look like? What are some of the fears that we have for getting to know our neighbors? What's going on and all these different things? So I'm going to be speaking this week, and next Sunday, the other pastor, Jeff, will be finishing this up and really digging into some of the fears. But we'll be getting into all that later. But first, welcome everyone. Welcome Bathurst and Chatham. It is great to have you guys here. And everybody who is watching online, I know there's many of you out there. So welcome as we enter this next series of Into the Neighborhood. This morning, we're going to be looking at a few different stories. We're going to be diving into Dennis. We're going to be looking at a frustrated Paul, the three little devils, and the chair. These are stories I'm going to share with you this morning that's going to be enlightening this concept of going into our neighborhoods and loving the people around us. So Dennis the Menace. As I said, I grew up beside a Dennis. His name wasn't Dennis, but it might as well could have been. But for the sake of the story, we'll call him Dennis, and for the sake of, I have no idea, maybe he'll watch this one day and see this and be like, what's that? That's me. No. So Dennis. Man, I have some stories about Dennis. I picked three of the many that I'm going to quickly just help enlighten you on why I call him Dennis. But there's the fat goldfish, the painted driveway, the watered bedroom. Dennis. There was one day that, however it happened, he got into our house. I don't know where we were, but we were around somewhere. He gets into our house, goes straight up to my bedroom, and I had, like every other little kid growing up, a big goldfish bowl that's sitting on my dresser. The food's right beside it. You take a couple flakes and put it in. He broke in, got up there, grabbed that whole can of food, dumped the entire thing in there, because, obviously goldfish was hungry. So feeds the whole thing. He was just a little kid. He didn't know any better as he's doing this. But I find out later, I come up to my room and just be like, you just see this cloud of fish flakes, and it's just filled with food. No idea what had happened to that goldfish, and I don't know how he got in there. Somehow he did that. Feeds the fat goldfish. The painted driveway. My parents were painting their railing on their front porch of their house, just putting a nice fresh coat of white paint on there, just to spruce it up. They take a quick break, go inside, I don't know, clean off some brushes or something. They come outside, and here's Dennis rolling our driveway that had been paved. The painted white driveway. Dennis. There's the water bedroom of where, again, I don't know how, where we were or anything, but he got into our house, and this one, he didn't get into the house, sorry. I had left my bedroom window open. It was hot out or whatever, just leaving some breeze. Second story bedroom window, not even on the main floor. Second story, it's up there. And left that open. My parents were watering the backyard, the grass and the flowers and all that stuff. They had the sprinkler just going, and they left it going for however long. I don't know where we were, but Dennis comes, and we had a shared backyard, so he goes and, rightfully so, thinks, well, that window probably needs to be cleaned some. Picks up the sprayer and just holds it up, just aiming it right into my bedroom window for I don't know how long. I come back later on in the day and go up into my bedroom, and it's like squish, squish into the carpet. It's like, what is going on? Maybe in the basement, I'd be like, okay, water got in, but I'm on the second floor. Why is my bedroom soaked? And he had gotten a hold of this sprinkler in the backyard and decided to water my bedroom. Dennis. Like I said, there's many more stories about Dennis and our interactions with our Dennis. And these things that Dennis can do can make living beside a Dennis difficult. It can be any of these people. If you look at any type of neighbor, at times we can feel it may be difficult. The key, though, is what we're going to look at today and how we react to those difficult times. It's how we react to a Dennis or a Gladys or whoever it is we may have. You see, these difficult stories, the painted driveway and the watered bedroom, the freshly pulled flowers, all that, it didn't affect the relationship that my parents were trying to start and have with their neighbors. It didn't affect it. I'm sure they were mad. I'm sure there may have been some words given. I don't know. I don't remember. But I know that there was still a relationship there, and they were striving towards something, and it was building that relationship with them. And it was showing them a love that we're supposed to show to our neighbors. We're going to finish off that story later on and let you know what happened with that relationship there. But it doesn't matter what kind of neighbors that you live by. It doesn't matter which one it is. God has asked us something very clear. He said, go and love your neighbors. Love them. Love them the same way that you love yourself. That's this command that he's given to us. You see, loving our neighbors has started to become almost like a hobby to us. It's that thing that, you'd really like to get good at, but I'm going to do it when it's kind of convenient to me, or I'll keep it on the shelf and pull it down, and all these things. That's what loving our neighbors has become, at least to myself anyway, where that's how we're treating this love your neighbors. It's just use it on the weekends. Just do it when it's convenient. But in Matthew 22, page 899 in the Bible's in front of you if you need one, it says, the question is asked, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replies, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. This is the command that he's given. Loving your neighbor as yourself. It's not just a fun little phrase to say. It's not just a little nugget of information that we have and hold on to. No. Jesus was asked, what is the most important thing for us to know? And he says it's two things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. And this one's just as big and just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's not a hobby. That's not something we just go to when it's convenient or do when we kind of think of it. This is like the one thing Jesus is saying, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go and love your neighbors the same way that you love yourself. There's more passages here. 1 John 3:16 says, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. This is how we know. What Jesus did for you is what I need you to do. That's what he's saying. Is what Jesus has done for you, I need you to do that same thing. Jesus laid down his life for people who didn't deserve it, for people who didn't care for him, and he wants us to do that same thing. Not because they deserve it, but because he's asking us to do that, to show that same love. 1 John 4:11 says, dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. Because God loved you, because this is what God's saying is because I love you, I need you to love other people. I need you to love those people around you, whether it's difficult, whether it's easy, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what neighbor's beside you, this is what I need. I need you to go show this love. But the interesting thing about these two passages here, though, is this word ought. It appeared in the verse before here as well. It says, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. It says we also ought to love one another. And when we kind of just glance over that, we think this ought to. It's kind of like this, like it'd be a pretty good idea if you do this, or maybe you should consider doing that. Like you ought to maybe do it. That's kind of how I had heard it. But when you really look at what this ought word means, when you look back, actually all the way back just to the original languages, and what ought is here, it's almost looking at us as a debtor. As if we're almost in debt, and the way to pay off this debt is to love one another. Now, hear me on this. It's no way is it saying, Jesus has paid something for us, now you're in debt to me and you need to pay it off, because there is zero chance of you ever paying off what Jesus did for you. It was a free gift that he has given to you, and he paid that price because he was the only one who could ever pay that price. Amen. But here we have this picture of this debtor. Because normally, again, when we think of debtors, like we now owe something, or if our neighbors, it's like as if they owe something to us, and that's why I need to show love. But they didn't deserve anything for my love. Like they didn't do something for me to do that, and God's not asking us to do that. No, what it is he here is saying, it's not in the sense that you can ever pay me back. But I have done something to you to show you something, to show you a way I need you to live. I need you. You ought to do this. You ought to go and love one another. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is what Jesus is asking us. It's not like just hey, it'd be great if you would do this, but I need you to do this. I need you to show the love that I've shown you and that you now understand. I need you to go show that love to the people around you, the people that don't deserve it, the people that you feel don't deserve it. But I love them, and I want them to know and understand my love. This is what Jesus is saying here. You see, we are debtors because Jesus gave us a gift even when we didn't even ask for it or deserve it. And it's a gift that can never be given back or paid back. But what he asks of us is that we just like we didn't deserve it, just like we didn't ask for it, that we do that same thing, that we do that for our neighbors around us, because it's what God did for us. Galatians 5:14. For the whole law can be summed up in one command: love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law can be summed up in one command: love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law. Now, the law, it's found in the Old Testament here, and we have the 10 Commandments that, we could probably list off a few of them, or if we feel really good, we can list off all 10. But the law here, there's actually 613 laws that the Israelites were following, or trying to follow, and doing a bad job at, as we all would do. There's 613 laws, 613 commands of something that they need to follow. And this verse here, Paul's saying, for the whole law, all 613 commands, it can be summed up in one thing. It can be summed up, love your neighbor as yourself. That's what he's pointing to. That's what he's pointing all of this to. Now, I think if we look at a phrase that can sum up 613 commands, it is much more than just a hobby. It is much more than just a hope of something that we can maybe do when it's convenient. No, he's told us a pretty big thing here. Jesus is saying, everything's summed up in one thing. I need you to go. I need you to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, Paul here, he's not saying what I need you to do is just stop loving yourself, stop focusing on yourself, and just start focusing on your neighbors. No. He recognizes that the as yourself is an easy thing for us to do. We feed ourselves when we're hungry. We clothe ourselves when we're cold, and we protect ourselves. We house ourselves, all these different things, because it comes natural for us to love ourselves. He's like, do that. Do that same thing. You love yourself. I need you to do that, but also to other people. I need you to show that same love to those people who are all around you. He says, Paul here, he's saying, take that deep, unstoppable, primal, powerful desire to be happy. It's called self-love. Take that desire and apply it to your neighbor. Apply it to the people right around you. Do that same thing for them. So as I've said, I don't see how the 613 laws that can be summed up in one thing is something that we just think is a good message or something to kind of do, but it's something we really, really got to be focusing on. We got to focus on this. How am I showing my neighbor love? How am I loving my neighbor like I love myself? Like I care for myself? You see, I think it's a thing that we really do need to be focusing on. Our next story is a frustrated Paul. A frustrated Paul. You see, Paul, a man in the Bible here, Paul had an incredible encounter with God. It was so incredible that it left him blind for days. That's how powerful this encounter was that he had with God. And this interaction left him so sold out for Jesus that the message of grace and the forgiveness that comes with Jesus was the first thing on his mind, and what he was trying to do was just going out and sharing this message to those who are all around him. Paul took that to heart, and Paul went out and was sharing. So Paul here travels to Corinth, and this is where he started reaching neighbors. He got a job. He was a tent maker. He ran into a couple, a Jewish couple who were tent makers, started working with them, getting to know them, building a relationship with them. And this whole time as he's doing this, he's getting to know his neighbors, getting to know them. And while he's doing this, he's weekly going into the synagogue, weekly going in to speak with the Jews and the Greeks and speak with them and share to them, because they didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. They didn't believe that Jesus was actually the Son of God. And he was there trying to preach and tell them, no, Jesus is who he says he is. Jesus is the one who he claims to be. Weekly, week in, week out, that's what he would do, is go and be reaching the people in the synagogue here. Well, they weren't liking this message. They weren't taking it. And it actually started getting violent for Paul. So Paul decides to go straight over to the neighbor's house. He's in the synagogue. It's getting rough for him. He says, okay, I'm going to leave that with you. I've told you I am now going to go to the neighbor's house. You can see that here, Acts 18, 7, 8. Paul left the synagogue and went next door to the house of Titius Justus, a worshiper of God. Crispus, the synagogue leader, and his entire household believed in the Lord. And many of the Corinthians who heard Paul believed and were baptized. You see, Paul went right next door. He got up, went right next door to the people next door there, and he goes and he shares the message of Jesus with them, builds a relationship with them, has gotten to know them. And not only do they come to know who Jesus is, though the synagogue leader himself comes to know who Jesus is. He couldn't reach him in the synagogue, but he goes to the next door and just gets to know them there and ends up being able to lead him and his whole family and many, many more people to be able to come and know who Jesus is and have a relationship. Many were saved and many were baptized. You see, Paul got it. Paul understood. He went to the neighbor's house, leaving the synagogue, and he got to know them. See, Bathurst, Chatham, everyone here in Newcastle, this is what we need to understand, is we have neighbors all around us. Each one of our communities, we have people who are there, who need to be reached and who need to understand who Jesus is. But we need to be actually going and showing a love to them, not just kind of hoping that they do come. Because I'm sure if we were to have a one-on-one sit and a say, if I would say that, Miramichi words, right? If we were to have that sit and a say, I'm sure you would say that, yeah, no, I want my neighbors to come to know Jesus. I'm hoping that they come to church sometime. And this is something that I've struggled with as well, is a lot of times I would be hoping that, one of the church's events or a program or something, I'd hope that they would come to it. But honestly, what they're waiting for and what they need is a relationship built and an invitation given. We talk about it quite frequently, that people are actually waiting for an invitation. Like for someone to say, hey, I would love for you to come to church with me. People are waiting for that. And that's what we need to be doing, is going and building these relationships, connecting with people, and reaching our neighbors. Not just when it's handy, not just when it's easy, but we need to do it because it's literally the most important thing that Jesus said. It's above all the commands here, is love your neighbor as yourself. Again, I'm not speaking about this today. Sharing because it's something I've mastered, and I'm about to give you the keys to doing this, and just follow my example. No, this is actually a personal conviction of mine that that I need to do a better job at. This is something that I believe is such importance that I think that we've kind of missed the importance of going and reaching our neighbors, building and connecting, getting to know them. The Christian community, whether in churches, seminary, the schools that I went to, online podcasts or books, wherever else you learn, it has put such a high importance on learning and theology, which I don't disagree with one bit, so don't hear this. I don't disagree with that. We do need to be learning. We do need to understand who God is more and more. So in these schools and everywhere else maybe we're learning, they're teaching theology, the study of God, soteriology, the study of salvation, epistemology, the study of knowing, ecclesiology, the study of church, pneumatology, the study of the Holy Spirit, Christology, the study of Jesus, eschatology, the study of end times, petrology, the study of early church fathers, missiology, the study of mission of God. While loving our neighbor is core to our faith, more energy is being put into learning more about Mary or sin or defending our faith than knowing and loving our neighbors. Again, I don't say any of that stuff is wrong because we do. It says, the verse we just looked at says, know and love God. We do need to understand Him. So I think we're getting that first part down to a T. We're getting that. We're wanting to learn more about Him. But we're missing that second step. Love your neighbor as yourself, which is just as big as the first one. But yet we don't see these studies in here. We don't see that kind of thing. I think as a church, we're doing a great job of making sure that people know that it's open for people to come and join us. But I think we can continue to take it step by step further, really going out there and really getting to know and inviting the people that we're interacting with day in and day out. You see, Jesus was born into a neighborhood, and that neighborhood drastically changed because of the ministry that was going to come. Paul went into this neighborhood, and it drastically changed. It was the start of the church of Corinth because he left the synagogue, got to know the neighbors, and invited them to a relationship with Jesus. The start of the church. So are we allowing ourselves to do the same? You see, we can't just live around our neighbors anymore. No, we need to love our neighbors now. We can't just be happy with the fact that we're living around and we're nice and friendly, that kind of stuff, but how are we loving them? How are we loving them the same way that we love ourselves? You see, we had a Dennis living beside us. As I shared some of the crazy stories of just some of the stuff that had happened at our house with Dennis living next door. We had Dennis. He was living there, living beside us. But that didn't stop the relationship that my parents were building with their next door neighbors. My mom still made it a point to get to know the mother who's living in the house next door. Got to build a relationship with her and eventually invited them out to church. Said, hey, why don't you join us? She got past whatever fears she may have faced. I'm sure she faced it because we all feel that being scared of talking about it or whatever it is we face. She got past that, invited them to the church. They came to the church, and not too long after that, that entire family came to know who Jesus is. That entire family were saved and started becoming regular attenders of our church. Because she got past the difficulties of who they were, or of Dennis, really. It wasn't that of Dennis. He was a little kid and just trouble. Got past that, was able to build a relationship, invited that family, and they came to know who Jesus is. But the story doesn't actually end there on our street. It brings us to the three little devils. The three little devils. I grew up, it was a fairly conservative church, but they were doing an Awana program on Wednesday nights, and they'd have theme nights and that kind of stuff. And it was getting close to Halloween time, so okay, let's do a dress-up event or whatever for that Wednesday night. Let's encourage the kids to dress up. Well, somebody invited a family from the same street that I grew up on, invited them to come to this event. There's princesses and maybe little angels and superheroes and policemen and that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, these new kids, these three brothers walk in, all three of them wearing the exact same full little devil costume. And people are like, oh, what do we do? Okay, this is strange. What do we do? But instead of reacting in a different way, made them feel welcome. They had a great time. There's actually a fourth little brother there too, who I think he was like a Ninja Turtle or something, but he still had the devil staff because he just thought it was super cool. So there's actually these four little brothers, and they were there. They connected with them. They came back again. They came back again, and eventually, not that long after, that entire family came to know who Jesus is, started a relationship with him, and became regular attenders of our church. Because somebody invited them. Somebody connected with them, their next door neighbor, and invited them out. And then, so that was now 2 or 3 families that were started coming to our church, and because people were inviting and connecting and doing that. Then there was a whole nother family, and it actually ended up being about 5 or 6 families just on our little block. It was just a small little block. But because they continued to connect with the people beside them and invited and reached out and showed, honestly, a love like they love themselves. And something happened. Something happened, and God was able to do what he wants to do, which is reach people and reach them where they're at. But he needed them to be able to do that. He needed them to go and show that love. That brings us to the chair. The chair. Jesus came to earth to pay the price, which was death on the cross, which was a once-for-all payment for everyone who believes. Then he rose again, defeating death, so that we could have a relationship with him. And he left us with one summed-up command here. And there's a bunch of stuff that he obviously gave us, but one summed-up thing that he wants us to do and wants us to understand. I need you to go. I need you to love your neighbor as you love yourself. This is what Jesus asks us to do. Go and love your neighbor as yourself. God has something amazing planned for our neighbors, and he wants us to show them his love. But we can't just be expecting things to happen. We can't just expect for our neighbors to all of a sudden just show up. That's what we hope for, right? I'd love to see our neighbors here. But we can't just hope for that. We need to go show them love and love our neighbors as ourselves. It's like this chair here. This chair, God didn't create this chair. God didn't make that chair. It's a great chair. everyone loves a nice rocking chair in their home. It's a great chair. God didn't create that chair. No, but God created a tree that could be turned into lumber, and lumber that could be turned into this beautiful chair. You see, God is wanting to do something amazing with our neighbors. God is wanting to reach our neighbors and make something beautiful, like a nice old rocking chair. God is wanting to do something, but He needs somebody to do something to get Him to that point. He needs us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. He needs us to go and show them the same undeserving love that He's given to us. He needs us to do that same thing for our neighbors and the people around us. But it's up to us to do some of this legwork. And it's just simply loving our neighbors the same way that we love ourselves, the same way that we feed ourselves, the same way that we protect ourselves, clothe ourselves, or whatever it is. That's how we need to be showing love to our neighbors. That's what God is asking us to do. Next week, we're going to be looking at part 2 of the series. As I said, where the other pastor, Jeff, is going to be concluding this and really looking at what are some practical ways for us to be able to reach our neighbors? Like what's something I can do? He's going to be looking at his experience in a foreign neighborhood, his time in the Dominican, giving a little update about what they had done there, and then looking into the fears that are holding us back. As I said, this is something I struggle with. I'm sure it's something that you guys struggle with at times as well. And what is it? What are those fears that are holding us back? So that we can do and see more rocking chairs built, see our neighbors get to know and meet and understand who Jesus is, and see them here at church. Now, I encourage each of you, because I'm sure you have stories just like the one that I shared, or a few of the ones that I shared. I know you have those. I'd love for you to share those with us. Either send us an email to the church, or on Facebook or Instagram. Send us a message on, hey, this is a real cool thing that happened, how I was able to connect with my neighbor, or whatever it is. We love hearing stories, and we love hearing from you guys. So if you have any of those, feel free to send those, so that we can even praise together and share these ideas of what we're doing to connect and just honestly love the people who are around us every day. So I encourage you to do that. Let's close there. Everyone stand with me. We'll pray, and then after, Chatham and Bathurst site pastors can take it from there. But let's just pray together this morning. God, I just thank you. I thank you for who you are and everything that you have done in my own life. God, I thank you for everybody who has joined us here today, whether here in Newcastle, Bathurst, Chatham, or online. Right now, I just pray for each one of us. And I pray, God, that you will help us better understand this picture of loving our neighbors the same way that we love ourselves. God, give us the ideas, or give us the urge to get to know our neighbors and to really, truly just be showing them the love that you want us to show. Because, God, I know that you love our neighbors. You love everyone, God, and I just pray that you'd help us be able to reach them and reach out to them. And honestly, just to be able to show them a love that they haven't seen before. But God, we're going to need your help to do that. So God, be with us as we leave here this morning. Help us to be able to just focus in on who you are, what you want us to do, and the mission that you've given us, which is love our neighbors as ourselves. God, thank you. I just pray that you just be with us, and everything we do would be honoring to you, God. In your name we pray. Amen.